A scream had been itching its way up Miles's throat for half of it. His arm was throbbing nearly as hard as his head, and his knees were sore from kneeling on the bedroom floor. He had no idea what they were doing. "Let's take a break," he told Charlie, hearing the exhaustion in his own voice. He tried not to feel guilty. He wasn't giving up, just catching his breath, recuperating. "I'll text Edmund, see if he's heard anything." After leaving the Hawthorne estate on Tuesday, he received a message from an unknown number, Edmund, asking if he'd found anything in Gabriel's room. Miles had managed to get him to agree to wait longer before telling Felicity, but that clock was steadily ticking down. The sympathetic look Charlie gave him made that inevitable scream inch up his throat a little farther.
"Yeah, sure. We need to let it clear out in here anyway. The last thing we need is the smoke detector going off and your mom breaking down the door."
Thankfully, Miles and his mom had made a silent agreement to avoid each other. She hadn't been up in his room in days, not since she found out he'd been secretly seeing Gabriel. "She probably let me burn," Miles muttered. Sarah still hadn't apologized or even tried to get his side of the story. She was barely talking to him beyond telling him it was his turn to do the dishes or that he needed to help his sisters with their homework. Charlie stretched before falling back onto his bed, mattress springs groaning. She had her own mom drama to deal with now that Aunt Robin was up and about. Miles grabbed Gabriel's scarf and clumsily got up from the floor, his legs stiff and one foot asleep, and joined her, crawling around her fan of red curls. Charlie shifted closer, pressing their arms together. "I wish I knew he was okay," Miles whispered. He wrapped Gabriel's scarf around his hand tightly enough to ache, sinking his fingers into the plush knit. Knowledge had been such a terrible burden these last weeks that Miles hadn't realized how awful not knowing would feel. Having someone vanish without a single clue, without any idea of where they were, not knowing why they'd left, if you'd ever see them again. He knew what Charlie thought. Gabriel had gotten spooked and run away. She didn't understand that he wouldn't do that. He hadn't fled when his death was looming over him. Why would he now that he thought he was safe? When they had the grimoire, when they'd kissed, and Miles had pledged to help him break the curse. Charlie had suggested that Jocelyn had appeared to Gabriel with her warning too, and he'd panicked. But Miles knew he'd never leave Brom. Something made him leave. Someone had taken him or forced him to go, to vanish without a trace and leave his phone behind. He was either being held against his will or dead. No, he couldn't be dead. Miles would feel it if he was. And Jocelyn had told him the future was unchanged. Gabriel was still destined to die in that tomb, Miles watching him go. But their whole quest hinged on the belief that that future could be changed. If they could do it, why couldn't anyone else? It wasn't like they'd know if someone else already called dibs on murdering Gabriel.